Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Happy to see such a nice crowd. For some reason, nobody wants the front row today. But we have plenty of seats, that's for sure. I hope everyone had a good week. Any visitors today? I'm looking around the room. Anybody have a visitor? Lots of our older members are back with us today, or not older, but previous members. We're happy you're all here today. I wanted to share with you, this is Quotations from Jesus Calling. As you come to me and take my yoke upon you, I fill you with my very life. This is how I choose to live in the world and accomplish my purposes. This is also how I bless you with unspeakable joy and full of glory. And the verse is, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." That's Matthew 11:28. I just had this little sort of poem to read to you. I was going through things in my house. I have lots of bags and boxes of stuff, especially from my mother. But I found this little thing in my mother's notes, and I thought it was sweet. His power will ever prevail. No matter how the storms may rage upon the sea of life, no matter how the waves may beat, no matter what the strife, the Lord is just the same today as when he walked the sea, and he can conquer every storm that life may send to you. The waves are raging everywhere, and men are sore distressed, but all they need is found in him, who giveth perfect rest. So cast your care upon the Lord, whose strength will never fail. He calms the waves for you. His power will never prevail. So I like that. This morning I have a special guest. Cassandra Casabono is new to our church. Her husband is pastor of media, and he does so much for us. And she is a social worker, and she does good work too. I'm not sure where she works, but she's going to tell us some about herself and share with us about how to sleep well, which we all need.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, this is my first time here with you guys, so I'm excited to be here. And so I am going to just tell you guys a little bit about myself. I was relating with Rita when she mentioned that there's a lot of boxes and bags in the house, as Ruben and I just moved this week, and so our house is literally just filled with boxes and bags, and we have a lot to go through. So yes, my name, usually I go by Cassie, and my husband Ruben is back here helping out. He usually is running place to place as the pastor of media and communications. So we moved here to Keene probably about 6 months now. So I still feel like we're fairly new, but at the same time, we're really kind of learning our new way of life here in Texas. I'm originally from Michigan, and our last assignment was working in North Carolina. And a little bit about me is I did put up a slide here if we want to, go to the next one. We will be talking about sleeping well, but this is just a picture of us in the snow. Is nothing, well, I guess you guys did have some snow this last year. But our dog, Nala, this is our little family. She's a husky, and so she loves the snow and is learning to adapt to Texas heat, as we are. And so, like Rita said, I am a social worker, and since I've been in the field of social work, I've gotten to do lots of different things that I'm excited about each of them. I guess I don't feel like I have really a favorite area, but so far I've done just working with children and families. So I've done a lot of immigration and working with refugees and those who are recently arrived to the United States. And that's currently what I'm doing. I've also done some work with children and families in ongoing investigations with child abuse and things like that. So tend to work with children. Children is really one of my main passions. And then I'm also currently doing some online therapy work. Right now I work virtually from home doing therapy, as well as for Bethany Christian Services doing refugee work. And one of the things, as in talking with my therapy clients and even just relating in my own life, is sleep. Sleep might not be the main reason that people are coming to get mental health services, but it is something that is impacting people's mental health, our physical health. And so today just wanted to talk a little bit about how to sleep well. We all hopefully are sleeping, or I imagine we wouldn't be functioning very well here today. But just what are some better ways that we can sleep, and just some kind of different strategies, different things that impact us. So that's what we're going to be spending a few minutes talking about today. So we can go ahead to the next slide. So you guys feel free to interact if you'd like to, share some of your experiences rather than just, hearing me talk for the next little bit. So I know it's a little small, but hopefully you can read some of it. I will read it out loud as well. So it asks, how much sleep do you need? On average, most adults need 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Getting enough sleep helps us feel better. It strengthens our immune systems. It's linked to a lower risk of depression, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and obesity. So all of those things are lowered, or we have a decreased risk for when we're getting this 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And so to begin making changes on sleep, we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a few minutes, which is keeping a sleep inventory. So that sounds maybe a little strange, and it doesn't mean we're filling journals necessarily with, what our sleep experience has been like, but keeping track of how many hours of sleep am I sleeping per night? How would I rate the quality of that sleep that I'm getting on maybe a scale of 1 to 10? Was it really poor that night? And then what were maybe some things that impacted my sleep? So if we go to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about routines of sleep. So the value of a sleep schedule. Picking what your sleep schedule is. So that might look different for each person. It might look different for a couple. Maybe one person wants to go to bed earlier, the other person wants to go to bed a little later. But kind of picking a sleep schedule that is doable for you guys or for you as an individual. And in as much as possible, trying to stick to that sleep schedule, plus or minus 15 to 20 minutes. So that means even on the weekends. I remember, as a teenager, I would wait for, Sunday to come around and sleep until noon, 1 p.m., which really, sometimes as a teen, I know we needed extra sleep, but as a traditional way of functioning, week to week, day by day, it's best that we don't kind of binge on sleep, if you want to put it that way, but try to get up even on the weekends around the same schedule that we do. We can maybe sleep in a little bit, but try to not push our routine too far off, because that might make it hard to wake up on Monday morning if we got a ton of sleep on Sunday. And just knowing that over time our bodies will adjust. So anytime we're trying new habits, learning new things, it takes time. It's a process and it's a journey. So don't knock these things until you kind of give them ample chance to try them out to see if they work for you. The second thing is having a wind down ritual, or kind of like a flow that you do starting about an hour before bedtime. So maybe you're starting by just setting a reminder on your phone an hour before you're planning to go to sleep, and starting this routine of maybe you're getting in your comfy pajamas, maybe you're making yourself some tea, or starting to read a book, listening to calm music, taking a bath, any of those things to kind of start getting your body a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more ready to go to sleep. And then there's the good question of naps. Are naps good or bad? Sometimes after a long week or a long day, a nap sounds really great. I know for me, I have a hard time taking short naps, and it ends up being kind of like several hours, and then I almost feel worse afterwards because I wake up feeling kind of groggy or lethargic. So what they recommend is taking, if you can, a 20-minute nap. Preferably not towards the later part of your day, because that will probably mess with your actual sleeping routine. But 20 minutes, in the early day or in the early afternoon, And if you're like me, you might say 20 minutes, it takes me 20 minutes to fall asleep. And so what they recommend in those situations is if it takes you a while to go to sleep, setting that timer on a phone or an alarm clock or something to wake up in 20 minutes, and maybe at first you can't fall asleep within those 20 minutes, but allowing yourself to just lay there and to rest, even if it's just with your eyes closed, and then getting up after the 20 minutes. At first, maybe you're stressing, thinking about, has it been 10 minutes? Maybe it's been 15 minutes already. I'm still just laying here. But really just trying to quiet your mind. And then over time, and again with practice, you'll be able to start getting into, that 20 minutes sleep kind of nap time. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. All right, and so the next thing is using exercise for sleeping better. I think all of us have probably heard this before. It's not really something new to know that keeping our bodies active helps us be able to sleep a little bit better. So probably they recommend not doing exercise like right before you go to sleep because that tends to kind of wake our bodies up. But trying to do some exercise, whether that's walking around the block, some Pilates, or something that's just getting us a little bit of activity at least 4 hours before we go to sleep. So try not to do it right before we're going to bed, unless it's something very like a relaxing exercise. All right, so let's go on to the next slide. So one thing this is something that I know Ruben and I have been working on a little bit is getting our bedroom kind of rest ready. And what does that actually look like? So one thing is being mindful of where we sleep. And so I want you guys for a moment to just imagine what your bedroom looks like. When you're picturing your bedroom, what are you feeling? Are you feeling like, man, my bedroom's a disaster. It just causes me more stress every time I walk into my bedroom. Do you feel a sense of peace or maybe excitement at the idea of, I get to go to bed or I get to spend some time in my bedroom? When you're thinking about your bedroom, what are you hearing when you're in there? What does that space seem like? Because we want to make our bedrooms kind of a safe space for us to be able to go to sleep. They talk about how our bedroom actually gets linked with whatever we're doing in our bedroom space. So for a lot of people, including myself, that have been working from home during the time of COVID, they really recommend not putting a desk or not putting your workspace in your bedroom, because that starts to link that space with work and with processing instead of that something that's relaxation and going to sleep or maybe intimacy. And so just wanting to make sure our bedroom is a place not of stress, but of mental relaxation. So the next piece is when we talked about what does our bedroom sound like? So maybe some of us live by an area where there's a lot of traffic or the train tracks, or we have noisy neighbors or barking dogs, or maybe you have sounds in your house of, sounds, or houses make those strange, creaking noises, or who knows. But what are you hearing, and is that impacting the way that you're sleeping? Having a reduction of noise improves your sleep. So some things that we can do is if you have an electronic device or something that makes noise, maybe silencing it, putting that away from you. Some people like to use a sound machine, a fan, some light music to go to sleep. Or if you're in a place maybe where you can't really control what noises are on around you, using some earplugs is a good way to try going to sleep a little bit better without all that sound. And then the next piece is having lights off. So I know some people, some family members that sleep with maybe a TV on at night, or they sleep with, a lamp on, things like that. And for some people that can really work. And so these are kind of give and take what works best for you, but this is what's been shown to help the majority of people when it comes to sleeping at night. One thing Ruben and I invested was those blackout curtains to be able to just not let light in until we wanted to see it. Sometimes, it's up bright and early and maybe that's not our sleep routine. And so maybe having those blackout curtains or having something that reduces the amount of light in your room. So if you have an alarm clock or you have something that's facing your bed, they recommend turning it away so that you're, one, not staring at the time, and two, not having that light facing you while you're trying to sleep. All right. And so the last thing for kind of getting your bedroom rest ready is comfort keepers. So what that means is our sheets and our blankets. What kind of fabric are they? Are they helping us sleep? They recommend not using synthetic or polyester to sleep in. And then another thing is making sure you have a good pillow. Sometimes these things might be an investment for some of us because maybe we're attached to something, or it seems like a big purchase to make maybe a mattress or a pillow. But those things really, if our sleep is impacting so much of our daily functioning, it really is an investment on our overall well-being. So I remember, that was something I recently had to change for myself. I was waking up every morning with my neck feeling sore. I needed to buy a new pillow. And so that's what we did, because it was just not very restful to wake up feeling sore every morning because of, that pillow. If you have a mattress that's 9 years or older, they recommend probably switching it out. So if you have, squeaky mattresses or the lumps, the bumps, that kind of thing, it might be time for an upgrade or a change if you're able to. And then the last thing as like a comfort keeper for your bedroom is to sleep with the temperature a little bit lower than maybe what you have throughout the day, kind of having a little bit cooler space to be able to, cozy up in your blankets or your sheets and rest and kind of relax your brain a little bit more. All right. And then if we want to go to the next slide. So we talked a little bit about this already, which is getting ourselves relaxed. So one of those ways that we can do it is using prayer and gratitude to relax. We know that stress is very powerful. We can feel stress for all different kinds of reasons, but also prayer and gratitude are equally, I would say, if more powerful than what our stress is. And so when our brain is focused on positive thoughts like love, safety, security, instead of things like maybe the fears or frustrations or worries that we have every day, it actually brings relaxation, physical relaxation to our brain and to our bodies. And so being mindful of what are we thinking about, what are we doing right before we go to sleep. And so spending a few minutes in prayer, or maybe spending a few minutes, whether you're speaking these things out loud, writing about them, just acknowledging some of the things that we're grateful for throughout the day, can really help our bodies and our minds kind of wind down and relax. And then the next one says doing a brain dump. This is kind of one of my new favorite things to do, actually, for both work and before bed, is I don't know if you guys have ever had, like, you're getting ready for bed and you just have these racing thoughts or this loop of all these different things, maybe what you need to do tomorrow, maybe some of the things you forgot to do this day, and just, all different kinds of things we have going on a day-to-day basis, but spending a few minutes to do this, what's called a brain dump, grabbing a pen and paper and setting a timer for 3 to 5 minutes, writing down everything, just in short of what's on your mind. Is it, I forgot to buy somebody a birthday gift? Is it that tomorrow's my anniversary and I don't want to forget that when I wake up in the morning? What is it that's kind of going on in my mind that I want to put down on paper and just stop thinking about and putting it down? Even just the act of getting things out of your mind and onto something physical, it does a really good job at kind of letting go or letting us relax a little bit, because it's no longer only in our mind. And without judgment, we're making this list. So, it's not something we're feeling worse about because maybe we forgot something or we need to do something that we didn't do, we weren't as productive as we thought, but just putting it all out there. And then there's different methods to kind of what you do with that list. Some people like to tear it up and just throw it away, like, I'm done with these worries. Other people cross off the things that they cannot change. So there's a lot of times we spend, or a lot of time we spend maybe worrying about things that we actually have no control over, we can't do anything about. And so crossing those things off and then making a plan for the things that we can change, saving that maybe for the next day if we'd like, or using that as, this is a list that I'm going to pray over tonight before I go to sleep. However you want to do it, that brain dump really helps bring us some relaxation. And then the next piece for getting ourselves relaxed is practicing deep breathing. So when we breathe, it gives oxygen to our brain. And there's different types of breathing that help bring more oxygen to our brain and can physically relax us. One of my favorite ones is the 7-4-8 breathing. So that's us breathing in for 7 seconds, holding our breath for 4, and breathing out for 8. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Yes. Just through here. And you'll find when you're breathing in for 7 seconds, it's actually a lot longer than you would imagine. And breathing out for 8 seconds, actually you start to use your tummy to do that, which is good to be able to get your full body engaged into the breathing. And doing this 3 to 4 times. Sometimes you can do this before you go to bed, while you're in bed and you realize you can't fall asleep, or even in just any general life stress situation. I would try practicing, even if you want to practice for a moment right now, practice breathing in for 7 seconds. And then you hold it for 4, and then breathe it out for 8. I'm seeing a lot of people trying it. That's cool. So I don't know about for you guys, but when you try it, I feel a physical release in my chest area. Of just kind of a little bit more relaxed. And when you do that 3 to 4 times, it kind of starts to bring that relaxation to your whole body in a physical way. And also, when you're thinking about counting your breath, you're really not thinking about anything else. So that takes away any worries or things that you might have on your mind. All right, so we're almost done here. If we want to go to the next slide, what we can do when we can't sleep. So these are some ways to improve our sleep, but maybe you're laying in bed, you feel like you've been there forever, and you're like, this is just not working. I can't seem to turn my mind off. What are some things that we can do? So just like, I don't know, I know most of us have probably been in a stressful situation and someone says, just relax or calm down. And usually that does not make us feel very calm or very relaxed. So same thing when we're lying in bed and we're telling ourselves, just go to sleep or just, lay down. That doesn't help us either. Same as it doesn't when we try to force relaxation or things like that. So the first one is don't force it. If you can't sleep, we're going to talk about kind of what we can do. So as we talked about, we're moving our alarm clocks. We're kind of not looking at the time, hopefully because of light and also because we tend to stress or worry about the time when we're trying to fall asleep and we can't. So the next thing is if you're lying in bed and you feel, so you haven't checked the clock, but you feel like it's been about 20 minutes, what they recommend doing is actually getting up, not staying there and just continuing to force yourself to try to go to sleep, but get up and go somewhere where it's dimly lit, not a lot of lights on, and do something calming, whether that's, a craft, knitting, crocheting, reading a book, folding laundry can be kind of mindless sometimes, coloring in a book, whatever it is that is kind of just relaxing, but also you're doing something a little bit active at the same time, and then kind of waiting for your body to start to feel tired. Going back to sleep when you feel sleepy. Some people, when they first start this practice, they're actually doing this process multiple times in the same night. So if you do it and you feel sleepy and you go back to bed and your mind kind of wakes up, that's okay. Wait what feels like your next 20 minutes, try it again. So this is, again, like we said, kind of a journey. It's a process to be able to learn these practices. And what we tend to do, is reward ourselves when we can't fall asleep, which might be I'm grabbing a phone, or I'm going to turn the TV on, or I might grab a snack. Things like that are not recommended because they don't actually relax us. They don't usually help us fall asleep. I know some people say they do fall asleep with maybe watching TV, but they recommend screens. And I know we're not talking about screens a lot today, but screens do impact our brainwaves and how we tend to fall asleep. So they recommend not grabbing a snack, not turning on a device or electronic of some sort when we can't fall asleep, but doing one of those other activities that we mentioned a few minutes ago. And the last one, which is clock out, kind of goes hand in hand with some of the other things that we've talked about, which is we've turned off the lights, maybe we've done our hour of wind down routine or just relaxing things, and then going back to that 20-minute rule. If it feels like 20 minutes, all right, I'm going to get up, I'm going to go work on something in a dimly lit room, I'm going to go back to sleep. Maybe pre-planning what you're going to do if that is a struggle of yours. Maybe having a book ready, or maybe having a coloring thing that you're going to work on or writing a letter, having that space ready for yourself if you know that's a struggle of yours. All right, so we're coming to the end here. Our last slide is kind of where do I start? We've talked about a lot of different things, and it's really overwhelming whenever you're trying to do something new and there's a lot of different things that you feel like you have to do. I don't know how many of you have tried, I'm going to get healthier, I'm going to diet, I'm going to do exercise, I'm going to do sleep, I'm going to do all these different things, and it's really hard to be successful when we're trying so many different things all at once. So what I would recommend is picking one of these things and just trying that, starting there. Using your little sleep journal if you want, to be able to track what things are helping or maybe hindering you from sleeping well, and giving it a try. Maybe saying, I'm going to do for a week or a month, I'm going to try using earplugs or a sound machine. Maybe I'm going to buy those blackout shades or use a sleep mask and try just reducing the light. I'm going to try putting my alarm clock away and not looking at it while I'm trying to sleep. Setting a reminder to turn down your lights before bedtime. Making the bedroom a little cool, maybe experimenting with the right temperature, changing your bedding or your actual bed if need be. And then not reading or not working or watching TV or eating in bed, those kind of things. So those are just kind of some suggestions for taking things one step at a time and kind of creating this as a journey for yourself, and trying something that's going to work for you. We're all totally different people. We have different experiences. We have different things that we enjoy that work for us, and finding what is going to work best for me, because it might be different for you than it is maybe for your spouse or a friend or something like that. And then just in general, being mindful that there are lots of medical conditions that contribute to not sleeping well, as well as mental health conditions. So if you're experiencing things of pain, headache, or this is going on for several months or a year, it might be best to go to a medical doctor to get that checked out, just to see if you have anything else going on that might be impacting your sleep. That's always one of the first things to kind of just be aware of, is the difference between maybe changing up some of our routines and our habits versus having a condition that is impacting the way that we're sleeping. So, Rita, it looked like you had something to say. Sure. They recommend the hour before. Yep. So Rita's saying, for those of you that can't hear, like if you're watching TV and then you turn it off and you're kind of jumping right into bed, I know for some people they might do that and they have zero sleep problems. So I don't want to say that that's maybe everybody's case, but statistically, scientifically kind of speaking, they would recommend not watching or using electronics the hour before you go to bed. So when we talked about that sleep routine of having an hour to kind of wind down, it's doing things that don't involve screens, like, reading a book, playing music, things that are a little bit more relaxing, that aren't causing our mind to be overly engaged. Like not playing games on our phone even, which might seem maybe a little mindless at the time, but just being aware that the screens do impact usually how we fall asleep, because even if it doesn't feel like it, our mind is working to use those devices. All right. Well, hopefully you guys can try some of these methods and see what works for you and try something new. And so feel free to come up to me at some point and let me know how your sleep is or how things are going. I'd love to talk to you about it. So thank you guys for listening.
Well, that was very informative, and I do appreciate knowing Cassandra, and hope you can come again. And this morning, Carl Johnston is with us. As always, we're delighted.
Now it's my job to help you put into practice what you just said. But she did say exercise helps you to kind of wake up a little bit. So let's stand up. Let's at least, you can shake 3 hands, bump 3 hands, hit 3 elbows. Thank you. What's your mother-in-law's name?
Rosa.
Okay.
She's from
Okay. Very good. All right, if you get 3 in. Yeah, they're talking. That's good. That's good. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your goodness and for your care and the privilege that we have, Lord, of coming together. We've been mindful, Lord, over the last how many months, how precious that is. And so we ask that your Spirit would be with us, Lord, that you would inspire us and help us to understand your will for our lives. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen. I think there's a method to Evadine's invitations. I think she likes to get me on the first Sabbath of the quarter because then it's all up from here, guys. So we're looking at Deuteronomy. Does everybody have a quarterly? You need quarterlies? Do we need to pass out quarterlies? Are we doing that kind of thing? It's been a while. We've got them? Oh, we got them last week? Okay, perfect. All right, that's great. If you need some, see somebody. I'm sure they're out. Deuteronomy. Why are we studying Deuteronomy? That's one of those old Moses books, right? Who wrote the lesson? Cliff Goldstein. And you know, Cliff is into that metaphysical, philosophical, rambling-onical kind of stuff, right? Huh? Big words, yeah. So we're going to get a few of those, I'm sure, in there. Deuteronomy is a big word. It comes from the Latin, which means second law. Deutero, you know, if you have duo, deutero, all that kind of duo stuff, you know, that's like two. And then nomine, the nominal and nominal and all that kind of nominal stuff is law stuff, okay? So it's second law. Interestingly enough, when I was studying a little more seriously, and I went to the Catholic priest and said, you know, what about these commandments? What about the fourth commandment? Well, you know, the 10 commandments, they're repeated again in the book of Deuteronomy, which I didn't know where that was, but they're repeated again and a whole different reason is given for it. So, you know, you really can't get too serious about that kind of stuff. Interestingly enough, it is repeated again. And the reason that it is repeated again is because it gives us another aspect of what God is doing for his people and for us. Not only in Exodus, it says that the reason that we remember the Sabbath is creation. And the reason in Deuteronomy the main reason given in Deuteronomy is that it's redemption. And Jesus is our creator and our redeemer. So it was so shallow, that answer, and it comes so much fuller when we look at it and really study. Interestingly enough, in the Hebrew Bible, it's not called Deuteronomy. It was probably in the lesson, extra credit point. What was it? What's it called in the Hebrew Bible? These are the words, or the words. And interesting, Jacques Ducamp, retired seminary professor, never got a privilege of taking a class. I think I kept my average up a little bit. But excellent fellow. He was the real buddy. Where's Lynn? She's still Lynn. He was a buddy of Doc Register. Those two were real close. Anyway, Old Testament scholar par excellence, and he mentions that the word for the word actually can mean events. So these are the events. When was Deuteronomy written? Don't just say a long time ago. Deuteronomy is the 5th book of Moses, the last book of Moses. And it actually is more than just Moses kind of writing down a book. It's more like a series of lectures, TED Talks, if you will. Why? What happened? What's happening at this point in time? Because the lesson mentions in the introduction that Deuteronomy has to be taken in context. So what's the context, or what's happening, or what are the events, if you will, that are happening that Moses is writing about? Y'all got the quarterly last week. Did you study them? Okay, what happens? Okay, he takes them out of Egypt. That's the Exodus, right? Okay, Genesis is the creation. How they get into Egypt, all that kind of stuff, we looked at that. He takes them out of Egypt, that's Exodus. Then they go through all the stuff in the wilderness about the sanctuary and all that's going to happen and how he wants them to worship and education. And then we come to Deuteronomy. But before we get to Deuteronomy, we get to Numbers, and things all kind of go kaflooey in Numbers, right? They get fairly quickly, they get to the promised land. God says, look, you're going to go into the land flowing with milk and honey. I'm going to lead you. It's going to all be great, wonderful. And they were looking forward to this. And then the people came up with an idea. They said, why don't we send spies out into the land and see what we're getting and see how good it is and see all that stuff? And I actually used to think that was God's plan. And then looking back and reviewing here this week, if you look at the way it's worded, it doesn't seem exactly that way. And then going back to patriarchs and prophets, if you look at the spies, gives you kind of the indication that the people came up with this idea. They brought it to Moses and they said, well, Moses, what do you think? And they all thought it was a good idea, so they brought it to God and said, can we do this? And you know, this is after God has been putting up with them for a while, and he says, okay, go ahead. But, he says, I want you to, and then he gives them specific requirements. What was the requirements of sending the spies in? One from each tribe, okay? So he wanted to make sure they had the deck kind of stacked a little bit, okay? Because he knew what was going to happen, right? So they send the folks in, and the folks come back after 40 days, okay? Long time to look over real estate, you know, but 40 days. They come, and what do they come back bringing with them? You got to bring souvenir. When you go on a trip, right, you got to bring souvenir back to the kids, right? So what'd they bring them? Grapes, all right. But, all right, hey, I was at H-E-B yesterday. You know how much green grapes are? A lot, $2.98 a pound. We didn't get any green grapes this week. Anyway, can you imagine how much that would have cost? They brought this one cluster of grapes. It was so big, they had to carry it on a stick between two of them. Big bunch of grapes, right? I don't know if there were a lot of grapes or the grapes were just big. But anyway, so they come back and they say, it truly is a land flowing with milk and honey, and it's a great place, and it's fantastic, and all these good things are happening. Oh, is this my clicker? Okay, cool. I even got a clicker. We'll talk about that later. Evadine asked me to share with you what we've been doing with the Pennsylvania Conference. This week we just mailed out the last of 1.2 million handbills that are blanketing the whole entire state of Pennsylvania, a little bit of New York, and in a number of meetings. And she popped in the office the other day. We took her out through the warehouse and showed her all these skids sitting there, and she wants me to talk about that. So I'm kind of titling that, How I Spent My Summer Vacation. But just so that you don't practice everything that Kathy's told us here, I thought we'd get through the lesson first, and then you can go to sleep. How's that? Okay, so anyway, so they bring back these grapes, they have glowing report, everything is great, and then all of a sudden, the conversation shifts a little bit. Kind of goes downhill and says, yeah, it's good, but you know, those cities, they're big. The walls, they're huge. The people, they're giants. I mean, I don't know how we're going to do this. And so it seems that, you know, you ever kind of get started on a downhill track and you keep kind of going downhill? And so it finally came to the place that they went from the place of it being a land flowing with milk and honey and prosperity to a land that devours its people. As they're doing that, now Caleb and Joshua said, no, we're able to do it. Now, how did they think they were able to do it? Because God would enable them. And this isn't something that just happened out of the clear blue. God over and over and over again worked miracles for them. The 10 plagues of Egypt, the miracle of the Passover, the miracle of the Red Sea and crossing through dry land, the miracle of God putting the Egyptians in a bath, the miracle, all these miracles over, the manna, the feeding, you name it, over and over and over again. And God figured by now they'd get it, right? But they didn't get it. Well, maybe. Don't bother me with the facts. My mind is made up. We're not saying that today, are we? No. And so they come to the place, and and in fact, Doc is right, because all of a sudden, a little bit of problem. Oh, I wish we were back in Egypt. Oh, they didn't like the manna. Oh, I wish they had the onions we had in Egypt. Oh, I wish we had this in Egypt. You know, I think God just got tired of listening to them whining. And in fact, if you look at Numbers, and you look at Moses recalling and that's how Moses starts out. He takes them from where they are, and he tells them, he recounts the experience. Now, why does he do that? I'm sorry? Well, to remind them, but a little bit more. Who is he talking to? He's talking to the kids. And it's really poignant. Why? Why is this really kind of, if you think about the circumstance, the context, why is this really heartrending? I think Moses had tears. I think he had a lump in his throat when he was given this. Why? Well, parents weren't going into the promised land. He wasn't going into the promised land. They had gotten him so ticked. The most humble man, the Bible says that he was the humblest of men. The humblest of men finally got so ticked that he blew it. And God said, I can't have that either. Leadership held at a higher standard. I can't have that. So he's telling him, he says, look. So the whole book of Deuteronomy are these basically 4 speeches. The first one takes you through the history. And that's kind of where we're at right now. And the way we're going to study Deuteronomy, according to the introduction, is we're not going to go necessarily event by event, but we're going to go thematically. And so if you looked at the lesson here, it talks about the very overarching thing is that God is love. He came into the situation when they were in trouble, they were in slavery. He took them out and says, I love you. I'm going to make you a kingdom of priests. And I'm going to take care of you, and I'm going to do all this thing. All you got to do is love me back. And so that we're on the right wavelength, you got to follow what I ask you to do. Real simple. But you know what? People don't like to be told what to do. Sure, it's freedom of choice, but don't tell me what to do. And maybe to illustrate that choice, I don't want to do it so that I can show you that I don't have to do it because I've got a free choice. And that maybe answers Doc's question earlier. Okay. So we talk about that. He talks about the fall. He talks about the flood. Talks about going through. And so call of Abraham. So he goes through the history. That seems to be kind of a common biblical kind of thing. Remember when Stephen was brought before the Sanhedrin, the council, before they stoned him? How did he do his sermon, his speech to them, his message? He started out with the history, took them back and walked them through the history. And so that's what Moses is doing here. And we finally come down to the Numbers part where we're talking about where they refused to go in. And so Moses is talking, now it's 40 years later, that's Deuteronomy's 40 years later. They wandered around. Moses goes over the things, how God was upset with their fathers, with their previous generation. He talks to them about it. You know, if you look back at Numbers and you look at Moses repeating that in Deuteronomy, God was ticked. He was upset. And I tried to find it where he said, these 10 times you have tested me. And I was trying to find someplace in the commentary, where you had a list. We like lists. And I was looking for, okay, where was the list? And so, you could probably, the wilderness, they didn't have water. Doc said right after Moses, they couldn't find Moses for a few days, and so they said, let's go back to Egypt. And then they couldn't find water. Water was bad news. What are we going to do without water? Couldn't find food. Let's go back to Egypt. Let's go back to Egypt. Let's go back to Egypt. Even here, as Caleb and Joshua are saying, no, we can do it. Not on our own, but the Lord, look at what he's done for us so far. We can do it. And what were they going to do to them? They were going to stone them. And not only were they going to stone them, they had elected a leader to take them back to Egypt. And their concern was, they said, we're going to perish in the desert here, and these people are going to, and so God says, all right, that's it. That's what you keep saying? That's what you want? That's what I'm going to give you. And that's what happens. So after the 40 years, Moses is not only reminding them, but he is encouraging them, he's exhorting them, he's telling them, don't blow it like your folks did. And so he goes through, and so that's part of the whole thing of Deuteronomy. As I said, it was pretty sad. Can you imagine being Moses and having to make that speech? And Moses wasn't feeble. It's not like, oh, I don't think I can make it, folks. No, Moses was clear-eyed. He was strong. I mean, after all, he put up with 40 years with them. Now, that's his third 40 years. Think about that. First 40 years, Egypt, okay. Second 40 years with sheep. And then he had the third 40 years with, I guess maybe that was the worst. What do you think? Carping and complaining. And something else interesting, when I was going through Patriarchs and Prophets, look at the 12 spies. She mentions in there, she said that if Moses, how Jethro came and his father-in-law came and said, hey, you're going to wear yourself out doing all this. He said, why don't you, delegate? And so they thought it was a good idea. Ellen White says that if Moses probably would have been stronger, God would have given him enough wisdom that he wouldn't have had to do that. Now, that was something I just kind of flipped through last night. It's like, okay, there's something you got to look a little deeper. And it's the same thing with the 12 spies. God often gives us what we ask for when it may not be the best thing for us. Can you say amen to that? And finally here in Numbers and Deuteronomy, he gave them what they asked for. This is what you want. This is what you'll get. And you think about that, especially when the lesson says that God is love. How does that square? With God being ticked and him wiping out the generation. Now, one thing else we don't realize, the 10 spies that kind of turned them down the bad road, down the road to wherever, what happened to them? They died. Yeah, they died, but I heard something. Yeah, there were 12. The 10 spies died immediately. The plague took them. And see, the rest of the people, they say, ooh, the old teacher joke is, or the old parent joke to the teacher, if you want my son to behave, hit the kid next to him. Right? Okay, so they saw what happened. God allowed them 40 years. God allowed, and can you imagine that 40 years probably wasn't all pleasant for the parents. Can you imagine the kids? Now the kids are 20 years and younger, okay? And can you imagine trying to correct your kid? And what do they say? Who are you to tell me, huh? Who are you to? I had the weirdest dream. I woke up this morning and said, I was fighting with my father. And I actually said, who are you to tell me by your, what you did? And I'm waking up and saying, he's been dead for 20 years. So imagine the kids are this whole situation that's going on. And all God is trying to do is to bring his plan to fruition. And he doesn't give up. He says, okay. So he wipes out he allows that generation to pass. Because why? They weren't going to get it, were they? Don't bother me with the facts. My mind is made up. I want to go back to Egypt. They were never going to listen. They were never going to get with God's plan. They were never going to be told what to do. Interesting also, Moses brings up, the lesson brings up the flood. Same situation on the flood, wasn't it? God, after the fall and everything that kind of happened there, brother killing brother, and God finally said in Genesis 6, he says, the minds of the people are evil continually. I think that's an easy way of saying, hey, I'm not going to be able to do anything with these folks. So, wipe out, start all over again, reboot. Okay? Even after the reboot, what happened? What was the next event that you read about in Genesis? The Tower of Babel. And the Tower of Babel was kind of the same thing, wasn't it? If God decides to send us another flood, let's build us a tower. We'll be safe. And let's make our name great. Let's save ourselves. So, yeah, things haven't changed. Things haven't changed. And so I think that's why we're looking at the lesson in Deuteronomy, because Moses gives some important advice to the next generation that are on the edge of the promised land. And maybe that's where we're at right now. You know, I always shudder to kind of, a good evangelistic tool is to try to incite the folks, you know, and look at the various scenarios that could happen. And I remember there was an evangelist a number of years ago that would go through the newspaper, and he would throw the newspaper, that was before media, he'd throw the newspaper down, and all these events that could happen that pointed to the second coming. And you know, I have found that to actually be counterproductive anymore, because people are concerned. People are anxious. I almost find it easier and better to say, look, God is going to see us through when we need to seek his face. Can you say amen to that? And so as we see these events, you know, you can't imagine that it could get more chaotic. You can't imagine that philosophically, you know, I was having a conversation with somebody before we came in, and we were talking about how bad things are, but mentally, it's tough to reason anymore. It's tough to know what's truth. It's tough to know who to even talk to anymore. You know, and everybody kind of picks their filter and who they want to hear, and then once that's done, then don't bother me with the facts. My mind is made up. I'd like to kind of close with what Evadine asked me to do, and that is to share with you what we have been doing these last few weeks and months. My summer vacation, you know, Elle and I work over at Seminars Unlimited, have for a few years, and you know, last year we were on total survival mode. Do I have to push something to make the thing come up? What do I push? The arrow. Okay. Well, how about that? Okay. And I have to alert you. It's kind of one of those things don't expect much. One, it's been a long time since my PowerPoint class, and number two, I got this text last night as I was heading home. It says, oh, by the way, share what you're doing in Pennsylvania. And I thought, well, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So I downloaded the camera, what I had. So we're going to kind of whip through these. And this is the handbill. This is the 1.2 million handbills. And you'll see what that kind of stacks up to be. Now, in the U.S., it averages about 2.5 people per residence. Okay, so 1.2 handbills or invitations could reach a potential of 3 million people. And that's all going out this week, so we need to pray. The meetings start next Friday night. Meetings start now. That's the fourth wave. Pennsylvania? 57 different places in Pennsylvania. Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and you name it. I can give you the zip codes of a bunch of those. But that was the fourth tsunami. The first tsunami started here with the Texas AWR meetings, and we had 200 and some meetings with banners and flyers and postcards. We had 400,000 postcards individually addressed to 200 different churches. You can see them. You can see each of the boxes there, and then we had yard signs, and so there were 250 yard boxes that had to get with yard signs, and there's the banners, and there's some other boxes, and there's the start of those meetings, and those are backdrops. Every site got a backdrop, and so those are the cases for the backdrops. I bought one on eBay. I liked it. I went back to buy another one. Sorry, we're out of stock. Went back to some places. Sorry, we're out of stock. And then they said Walmart has them. Well, Walmart was buying them from somebody in China, And so I could only order 12 at a time. But they shipped them in 2 at a time, so 20 different orders to bring in all those 200 and some. And then here are some of the handbills and more of the boxes. And here are some of those that each were localized, and we put 8 up to a sheet. And then you can see how many, that's 1 run for each of those sheets there. And then that was the first wave. And then we also, in addition to those 400,000 going to 200 different sites all across Texas and some of Oklahoma, we had 500,000 handbills that were of the AWR evangelists that were in various places here along the state, many of them down in the valley. But then the next wave that hit us here was Minnesota. This is a handbill for Eric Flickinger from It Is Written. And they asked us if we could do it, and I really was overwhelmed and said, I really don't want to. I don't think we can. And then we said, by faith. And I have a kind of a soft spot for It Is Written because that's how my parents were baptized. And so if it wouldn't have been for It Is Written, I probably wouldn't be talking to you. So then we had those. And so Minnesota was much smaller. That was only 300,000. But they were a little more complicated because it was a double postcard that had to be perfed. And then there's the wrapping. Pennsylvania had 100 skids. Minnesota had about 40 skids. There's more posters going out. So all this time, these are going out while this is happening, and we're trying to keep everything kind of going on. And as I said, I just kind of downloaded my stick here, guys, so you'll just have to bear with it as you see all these boxes and all of those that had to go out, and handbills and boxes and you name it, and let's see where else. We'll get to something else here that's a little more interesting. Okay, and I got the privilege of delivering about 100,000 of these just locally here, and so that's me at the post office. And then there's one of our UPS drivers. He's no longer doing our route anymore. He kind of left it and quit. Okay, more boxes, more handbills. There's FedEx. Oh, and in the meantime, Dr. Carlton Bird stopped by and said, hey, how about my meeting coming up? So we're working on his. And so there is one, that's about a quarter of those going to Pennsylvania. And there's another FedEx driver. We had them over 4 days because 100 skids is like 4 semi-truck loads. And so that's what the handbills look like. And there's more handbills. Now, fortunately, we were blessed with, you remember Dave Tharp used to run the college press here? Well, he's working for a Jewish company up in Fort Worth because retirement went kind of bad when he retired. And you remember that thing happened. Anyway, so they were able to print for us, but we still had to separate them. We had to catalog them. We had to get them all straight for where they had to go, and it wasn't all that fun. We had people that were wrapping, and every one of those skids had to be wrapped and placarded, and there was a whole system that my shipping lady had with the yellow and the orange and the pink, and it went to different places. It was a mess. I thought that she was either a genius or crazy as a bedbug. And then I discovered she was a genius and I was the crazy one after that. And notice these ladies. I want you to notice this lady. The lady in the back in the green should look familiar to you because we saw her earlier. And then we even got my treasurer, Ella's brother, Alan. We got him rapping, and so it was all hands on deck. And this is behind the scenes. You know, when you get the mission stories, you get the ones that are the baptisms and the fun stuff. And for a number of years, Ella and I had the fun stuff. We were up front, and everybody loved us and all that kind of stuff. When you're in the back, you kind of get ignored. So I thought I'd share with you some of the stuff that was going on in the back. But there are some front stories and some fun stuff. Down in Brownsville, where we mailed about 60,000 invitations, some folks decided that it would be kind of fun to go over and paint graffiti on the church wall. Some nasty stuff, and the city fathers felt kind of bad about that, so they sent a crew over to wash it and paint it. And then they even sent security and some police folks, so they were giving out stuff every night. I don't know all the results of some of those things. Some of them are still finishing up right now, and they always don't call back, and we're always on to the next tsunami. We had a meeting here in Everman, and they were videoing it. And they had to get people from the area that could, besides the church members, to do video and stuff. You know how it is sometimes with volunteers. So the evangelist is making an appeal, and he's talking into the camera. And he's making his appeal, and he's saying, you know, you need those that want to follow Jesus, you need to do it now. I want you to get up out of your seat and do it now. And the cameraman left his camera and came down front. He had never been baptized. I want you to do it now. And then for a little story that may be closer to home. Oh, by the way, if you look real close, way in the back, that's Ella waving, so you can see how many of those kids are. Let's see, go on a little farther. Am I going the right way? I may not be going the right way. Well, there she is. Okay, there she is. And just to show you that I was involved there, pushing pallets. Okay, and I remember I told you about that lady in green. And this is the first picture I had. Oh, a number of months ago, we found out about a lady that had moved into the place over where my mom is, and we have a little group. We have about 8 widower ladies, and we try to look out after them as best we can. And this lady moved in because she had just lost her husband. He just dropped dead at 65. And so we kind of felt, and we brought her into the office and found little things for her to do. She couldn't do a lot because she's legally blind. Legally blind in one eye and real close in the other. So I don't know if you can notice how thick those glasses are. And then a little while later, she told us that she went to the eye doctor and found out that while she had been blind for a long period of time, they could do something for her. And we thought, wow, that's fantastic. However, it cost $10,000. And she doesn't have insurance. She's barely making it because they were kind of independent. They didn't have a job where they had regular Social Security and all that kind of stuff, so she doesn't make very much. That's why she's there. And so we said, okay, let's see what we can do. And so we had our little widow group kind of came together, and some other folks came together. And oh, by the way, one of the other things we were doing in Arizona, we sent out 70,000 invitations to a Pathways to Health type thing. That Pathways to Health, they had, you've seen those. They have dental, and they even do surgeries at those kind of things. And they had an eye appointment eye clinic that they had set up. And so while we were talking about this, we talked to her and said, is there anything that you know of anybody that could do something for us on this situation? And they said, well, yeah, we've got an eye doctor. Come to find out, right in your town, Fort Worth, there is a place called Community Eye Clinic, run by, I think it's a Presbyterian church. They put it's just like a regular eye doctor's offices. And they work with students from San Antonio and Houston that are in their last year of residency. And they're all skinny little girls. But anyway, they come in and they do all the prep work. They do all the examinations. And they're very, I don't know if their grade depends on it or what, but they know what they're doing. They're not just phoning it in like on a Monday. And so they're able to do that. And they're right there. So we contacted them. We sent her there. $1,500 an eye. $1,500 an eye. We were able to raise that. She got one eye done in August. She got one eye done in September. And she did a whole lot of skids for us last week. The Lord is blessed. And her name's Karen, by the way. I want you to know a good Karen, right? You know that commercial, that M&M's commercial, you give them M&M's, I'm sorry for this, I'm sorry your name is Karen. Well, that's my name. Oh, I'm sorry, here, and she gives her a second one. Anyway, during this time, let me finish. During this time, she got another little bit of bad news. She's actually a cancer survivor, and her cancer has come back. She doesn't have insurance. She beat it the last time with alternative treatment, and so she's going through alternative treatment right now. But if you could see her wrapping pallets and what she was just a few months ago, the alternative treatment seems to be working. But it's not cheap, but the Lord has been blessing us to be able to try to help fund that. I bring this up because you've helped me before, and there are people actually in this room that are helping. And we appreciate, we found a way that if you would like to help Karen, see me, and we've set up a system where you could actually get a tax deduction for it. but the Lord is good. I wanted to share something that was close and the way the Lord is working miraculously. Heavenly Father, we look around us, Lord, and we can't imagine your coming could be too much farther off. But Lord, we see miraculous things happening in little ways, in big ways. And not only do we want to be ready, but we want to have all those that you've given us the privilege of coming in contact with, so that when you do come, we'll be able to look up, see your face, and hear from your lips, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." Oh Lord, help us to hasten that day, we ask in Jesus' name.